The views expressed on this podcast are Peter Deckham's opinions based on his legal experience, research, and academic work. The podcast does not offer legal advice. For any legal matters, always consult an independent attorney who can assess your specific situation. And now, on with the show.
Producer Amanda, lawyer excellent. Ask away.
Okay, I have a question about Biden's decision to appoint Kamala and circumvent the primaries. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that in the context of our system, rule of law. How does that fit?
He didn't appoint her anything. What he did is he basically said, I give her my blessing. And at that point, there wasn't enough time to have primaries. I would have preferred primaries. And, it just was the unfortunate thing. He stayed in office too long. And that's the same thing about Trump. You think he's got a shot at having a third term? I have the same shot. 0. So ultimately, he made a mistake by staying too long. And that speech, when he started, I've seen deer in a headlight with more articulate abilities than Biden had in that moment. He lost America in that moment. And suddenly, here's a woman who basically, if she were truly running for president, she should have known that 6 months, a year before that. She could have but she didn't. And that's Biden's fault. He screwed up. And I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. And Donald Trump has the uncanny ability of promising people everything they want and delivering nothing that he promised.
Along the same topic, Biden ran promising to stay in office for 4 years. And then he ran for a second term until he didn't. So how does that erosion of trust, on the one hand, what do you have to say in the context of rule of law?
It's closer to the rule of law, but it ultimately was an individual decision that should never have been made. And that individual decision was made too late, too little. I can't tell you how many times I had conversations with my friends. This guy needs to pull out of this race and leave it open. I mean, if they had an open primary, he would have had more choice. Kamala could have easily won that race, and she would have had more authority behind her. But when Biden pulled back, the anger of Biden, especially that he had deteriorated to that level, and nobody pointed it out, was an unforgivable sin for the voters. He's exactly where Donald Trump is today.
And when you talk about rule of law versus rule by law, and then you mentioned what principles do each of us live by, and then how are those aligned with our government, that's where my mind goes, is whether something was okay under the rule of law, but then out of alignment with what the constituents are okay with in terms of morals. That's where I feel that.
Let me address a fundamental problem with this last couple of elections. We dealt with people who looked at the issues, not the form of governance. They said, it's a bad economy. I don't trust the economy. All you got to say to get me to vote is, I'll make things better for you. Economy, kitchen table, kitchen table, kitchen table. I don't know how to tell you this, but if you choose an autocrat to make all your economic decisions, they have to be perfect 100% of the time. Trump was imperfect 90% of the time. He's the one who told you, honest to God, tariffs are not taxes. Of course they're taxes. And that consumers will never pay them. Consumers have paid 55% of the tariffs. The companies involved in importing things have actually absorbed the other 45% within their profit margin. But that can't go on forever. And you'll notice he just announced, okay, I'm not going to tax furniture. I'm not going to tax coffee. I'm not going to talk bananas, because I am. I'm just going to change things with no predictability whatsoever. I'm also going to mess around with the Fed. You mess around with the Fed and the dollar drops like a stone. Gee, Peter, how much has the dollar dropped since Donald Trump started opening his big yap about getting rid of or controlling the Fed and making them lower interest rates? How about 9.5%? That's a hard number, and it came from Donald Trump. That wasn't Joe Biden's loss. This is now Donald Trump's economy, and he screwed it up every way you can. How do you feel about blowing up boats? I have no problem if a judge deals with it or Congress votes for it. But if I decide I'm going to call someone a terrorist and that gives me the right to kill them, then I got a problem with that. Due process. Due process is something Donald Trump hates more than poverty.
So you discussed the infrastructure of our government, the three branches, and you said that Congress is not doing its job, that the judicial system is enabling it, and that basically power is now in a single person. And then I think, how do we stop it? And you've discussed spirals, which is an escalation, a spiral theory, an escalation. How do we stop it before it escalates even further?
Well, the answer is, if you don't stop it, it will take care of you in a very bad way. You will live a shorter lifespan. You'll live less well. The quality of life will plunge. We're already looking at people who have poor education. Why? I remember when I went to college, I paid off my student loans literally within 5 or 6 years of graduating. Today, I know people who are in their 50s who are still paying off college loans. I think education is the great upwardly mobile vehicle that has been taken away from all the Americans. We now say, Americans say, 35% of Americans say that education is no longer worth the money. We shouldn't be that way. China's making sure it's putting out lots of elitists. If you don't believe in elitists, next time you have a medical problem, just drop by your local pharmacy or your local barbershop and see what they can do for you. There's a reason you spend years and years and years training to do something and then learn to do it, and you have the respect of those around you. If you create a system where profits are vastly more important than healthcare, you're going to get a system where healthcare takes going to fall by the wayside in order for people to make more money. And it's not the doctors who are running away with the money. It's the people who run the financial systems, the insurance companies, the middlemen who are the interlopers. Can't call them anything else. I was going to say intermediary, but I cannot tell a lie. In the pharmaceutical world, it's just not how you get health. If you prioritize health, maybe you have a system where you get paid as long as you keep your patients healthy. There's lots of systems we can consider. We just don't. And at some point, you have to ask yourself, can we have unbridled capitalism make all the decisions that are going to affect human life? The answer is clearly no. So someone has to stand up and stop putting on labels. You call someone who wants to tax wealthy people more than other people a socialist, and people say, well, I don't like socialism. I grew up under a desk worried about these damn commie socialists blowing me up. That's gone. Kids today, they look at these as words, and that's the way we need to look at them. More importantly, we need to know what the words mean, and we need to know when we utter a word that looks like it's about to demonize somebody. That's too woke! What's in your head? What gives you the right to make that decision about another human being? And I find that arrogance absolutely upsetting.
Okay, I want to circle back to the infrastructure of our government, and when the check and balance system starts to break down to the point of what we're facing today, the reaction to that, and when how do we fix it? Is it reparable? And then we've seen, like in California, we just had an election that basically about gerrymandering, where all of a sudden gerrymandering is on the ballot. Please speak to that in terms of changing our rule of law versus like what our principles normally say. And now people are doing things that are against their principles in order to combat in order to fix the system. So it becomes
Well,
circular.
let's talk a little bit about our Constitution. It is the most unamendable Constitution in the democratic world. There's no constitution on planet Earth that makes you go through the number of hoops, getting 3/4 of the states to vote. I mean, we had one constitutional convention way back at the beginning. We have never had another one. People are actually telling you that the Second Amendment was a right to bear arms for everybody. That's not. You just pick up the damn Second Amendment and read it, and you'll know that it's not. But at some point, you have to say, does it have to get so bad that it's intolerable, that it does have to fall apart? And then who rebuilds it? I'm hoping that Gen Z wakes up and says, screw you, parents and grandparents. You've screwed up our environment. You screwed up our ability to afford houses. We're not going to take it anymore. We're taking over this government sooner than you like. We're going to elect younger senators, younger members of Congress, younger governors, and younger mayors. We're going to start doing things without the labels. We're going to stop the demonization. And no matter what you do, gerrymandering, we're going to overwhelm the polls with our passion.
And I'm all for empowering Gen Z. I have nieces and nephews who I think the world of, and I think they're smart, creative, ambitious, driven. I think they do have all the potential capacity to do better and to carry us forward. But putting it on their shoulders and also waiting for them seems to, we shouldn't be waiting for them. And
why are we waiting? Come on, guys, take over now. Well, there's an election coming up this year. Vote. Get your asses out there. Run for office. I'm not waiting for you. I'm pulling you in. I want you to take over. And yeah, there are plenty of old farts out there like me, maybe. I'm not running for anything. But there are people who are older who have good things to say. There is wisdom and kindness. And it's not like all the boomers and Xers are completely beyond redemption. There's lots of good people out there. But I'm willing to let the Gen Z people pick which of the elders they want to follow, embrace. I mean, you can look at people who speak from knowledge. If they make sense, listen to them. If it's because I said so, shut them up. Don't listen to them. Make up your own goddamn mind. Grr.
So we can step back and open the path for Gen Z, which is amazing. But how can we be their teammates as opposed to just putting it on their shoulders? What can we all be doing to be good teammates to the new leaders?
I think part of it is just asking people, what is the world you would like to live in? What does it look like? And in your mind's eye, what's a path to get there? And how do you embrace people who are not in your generation to make them want to join the march? Look, the environment is going to screw you more than it's going to screw anybody who was born in my generation because it's getting worse. So at some point, you have to take over and say, you know what? You've had your chance. Step aside. And if we can see things where you have value and you see things where you can bring value to us, we're open to it. We're all open to it. But I'm tired of saying the people who are making the decisions throughout history that brought us here, the people who are in Donald Trump's generation, and that includes me, have screwed it up. So let's say maybe we don't take them as the leader in the gospel. Look at Mike Johnson. I don't think he'd get a job in the modern world, but somehow he's the Speaker of the House. Here's a guy who basically probably has a head implant that goes directly to a microphone right in front of Donald Trump's mouth. And Donald Trump's an excellent ventriloquist. So what can I tell you? We need to have people who think, who are logical, who are reasonable, and most of all, kind. Here comes a tough question. I can feel it. I'm going to get
It's not really a question. It's a comment. You said you loved living in Lebanon. And I don't think I've had one conversation with somebody who's traveled and not come back and just loved the experience, from the food to the experiences of the adventures. But I think most importantly, the connection with people of different cultures. It's always a highlight. It's always life-changing. So if that's almost a universal experience people have, whether you're whatever label you have, whether it's politically, culturally, race-wise, most people have that experience. So how can that principle of enjoying travel and enjoying meeting other people and that adding value to our lives, how do we reconcile that principle with the rule of law in policies, whether it's immigration policies, healthcare, social programs like public education? How do we reconcile that?
Well, number one, your assumption about travel. I think we're between 30 and 40% of all Americans have an active passport. So in terms of going to other countries, we don't travel that well. And when we go to other countries, we bring our culture with us rather than asking people about their culture and blending in. If you look at Spain, Barcelona, there are people firing squirt guns at American tourists. You're making property prices go up, et cetera, et cetera. What I found fascinating, my son, for example, went to Ghana to set up a micro lending program for farmers, and he slept in a mosquito-infested hut, and he went out and he sort of polled the local villagers to find out what they wanted. He found the capital that he was bringing with him as part of the program he was working on, and he fell in love with them, and they loved him. And he brought prosperity by adding what he knew and what he had access to them. I think part of it is, instead of being an American when you travel, just be a person when you travel and look at the other people, look at their lives. I remember once I was in a Borana village. I think I've related this before, but it's an idea of culture that absolutely fascinates me. The Borana leader, the tribal leader, spoke fluent English, and I sat down with him for a conversation. I said, "So, if you've always been here?" He said, "No, I lived in Nairobi for a couple of years." That's a shithole. I hated the place. So I came back to my village, and I said, "But it's pretty simple here. You got a hut." He said, "Simple, but very comfortable." I said, "How did you become head of this village?" He said, "We use a very simple technique in this village called bribery. The people who are running for office give cattle to people to vote for them." "Oh, okay. How did you do it? Did you give your constituents cattle to get them to vote you?" "No, I got some friends in New York. They have these cheap fake Rolex watches. So I gave these cheap fake Rolex watches to my constituents and they voted for me." Okay. Kind of looking a little bit at how we get people to contribute money to political campaigns. Well, we promised them in the United States that if you vote for me, wink, 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 you're going to have government contracts. You're going to have all kinds of benefits when you need approval from governmental agencies. Wink, wink, wink. There's commonality there. But part of this is understanding, asking questions, and listening.
Which we all need to do more of.
Especially to me. Just kidding. Little levity there. See, I can't, you can't interrupt me because you're over there and I'm over here, and that's the way it goes.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Amanda, and thank all of you for joining me. Until next time. Goodbye, and Happy New Year again.
If you would like to give feedback, suggestions for new topics, or have a question that might be selected for a future podcast, please email us at decumpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. Until next time.